Hey there, this video is for all my amazing, awesome patients out there that, I love you guys and I know it's a bit of a crazy time going on right now. And there's so much information that we're hearing that is kind of crazy. And I think it's time to take a step back and just relax, take a deep breath. And you guys can hear all the same information if you just go to the CDC website, all the information that's out there that we know, but I want to give you a different perspective. And I want to share some things that you're not going to hear on mainstream media, that you're not going to hear on the news, that you're not going to hear on social media. And if you do, you're going to get a big banner flag on it. Not that it's controversial, it's just different. It's a different way of thinking of things. Because right now there's a lot of fear out there. And I want to try to help shift that away from fear to more logical, rational thinking so that we can really just kind of analyze what's happening and also give you a little bit of reassurance and faith in our own immune system and our ability for our body to adapt, to heal, which is what we're designed to do. We're designed to be healthy. Healthy is what's normal. And let's just go through a few things right now. And so it's really easy to get scared right now, and it's easy for that fear to pop up. If you look at the images that we see everywhere, that people in like almost gas masks, or not gas masks, but they're spraying the streets. It started in China. We saw the images. It's spreading. It's coming. Pictures of viruses, right, that look like these little alien invaders are going to get inside of us and take over our system. We see pictures of the medical teams fully covered head to toe, just taking all the precautions to not spread the disease, which, I totally understand, but the images can be scary then in themselves, right? And, we see people walking down the street, in China, they were spraying disinfectant everywhere. And I just want to just take a step back, like I said, and kind of look at things from a different view, a different lens, and just to put things into a slightly different perspective. So another thing that creates fear is just the stores, right? You can't even go to the grocery store right now without finding that shelves are empty. It started with toilet paper, which still blows my mind. And I don't think anybody really has a logical good answer for that. But even just starting to see the shortages of food because of the panic and the fear that's happening right now. So again, let's take a step back. Let's take a deep breath. Let's focus on kind of what's happening and what we can do and not have to be coming from a place of fear. Now, when we look at health, like I said, you can look at the stuff on the CDC website, and so I'm not going to go over everything that's on there, but a couple things that are really important what we do know is that for things to be spread, it's through droplets. So you have to be coughing or sneezing to be spreading it. And yes, it can live on surfaces for long periods of time, but then you would have to touch those surfaces and still put them into your mouth or not wash your hands and to contaminate yourself. So if you're practicing good hygiene, which is so important, and yes, we want to practice good hygiene at a time like this, but if we are washing our hands and practicing good hygiene and covering when you're coughing and sneezing, that's going to help to really decrease the spread. But a lot of times I think the fear is because people are saying, well, you can be a carrier for 2 weeks and not even know it and spreading the disease. Well, if you're not expressing symptoms, meaning you're not coughing and sneezing, you're not spreading the droplets unless you're like touching in your nose and your mouth and touching things. But even then, just washing your hands is going to prevent the spread through that. And so we don't really have to be afraid of that. And so if you're sick, stay home, all right? So if you're coughing and sneezing, stay home to protect others. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you're not expressing symptoms, coughing, sneezing, you're not going to be not putting your hands in your nose and touching everything. You're not spreading anything because it's spread through droplets. It's not just breathing in the air. It's not being in the same room with other healthy people or other people that are asymptomatic. It's not gonna spread. Okay, we know this. That's on the CDC website. You guys can look that up. But still, even with that, I'm not gonna go more into that because you guys can look up and hear that same information elsewhere. What I want to talk about is just a health philosophy. And a health philosophy that I developed through when I started my training in holistic healthcare 12 years ago. But it started with these brilliant men, Dee Palmer, who then, also Fred Barge, who wrote a book called A Life Without Fear. which is kind of the motivation for this. The title, it's not the motivation for the talk, but a little bit it is. But it's really the reason I chose that name for this talk is because when I read his book, which really helped shift and shape my health philosophy. So whether you know it or not, you have a health philosophy. So whether you don't have to think of I have a philosophy, it's our beliefs, right? It's like, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? What evidence do you have to support your beliefs, and what action should you take based off the beliefs, based off the evidence that you have? And that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to go through maybe beliefs and evidence that supports those beliefs, and what actions we should take as a result. And one of those beliefs are in what really just about health and where health comes from and how to be healthy. But one of the cool things about D.D. Palmer is he asked a question, and this was back in 1895 or even the late 1800s. He was asking a question of, why do some people get sick and others do not? And we see this all the time in classrooms where a teacher might say that, oh man, we had 10 of the kids were out sick, right, with a cold, a flu, or whatever it was. But in a room of 30 children, the other 20 children didn't get sick. They were still breathing the same air, exposed to the same germs. I guarantee, especially with, we know kids, they spread germs. They don't pay as much attention to hygiene maybe as we would like them to, but they're going to be exposed to more of the same germs, right? Well, you might say, well, different kids are eating different foods, and so maybe it's the household environment, which possibly, yeah, right? But what about siblings? People that we have in the same house eating the same food. What about them? Because we can have siblings where one gets sick and one doesn't. And so we have to look even a little bit deeper. And even in twins, you can see twins that have the same genetics. So when you say, well, it's the genes that determine it. Well, what about twins that have the same genetics, but maybe one gets sick and the other doesn't? So there's something else going on. Now, environment matters, right? So we need to be in a clean environment. If we were to look at the two fish bowls here, obviously if we look at the one on the left, we're going to find more bacteria and viruses, or more harmful bacteria and viruses present, probably in the fish bowl on the left. Now, if we came upon these two fish bowls, would the logical solution be we should dump some antibiotics into that fish tank, or maybe we should inject him with a whole bunch of vaccines to make him resistant to those bacteria and viruses that are accumulating in the fish tank? No, right? That's not logical with this fish tank example. We'd want to clean and make sure the fish has a good, clean environment. That's super important. Is bacteria and viruses will show up, or the more harmful bacteria and viruses are going to show up in a not so clean environment. So yes, sanitation is important. We know that. That was huge in the early 1900s. Of what helped eliminate so many different diseases was through sanitation and practices, and cleaning our water and our refrigeration. Sanitation is essential for health, and we need to practice good hygiene, of course. But the logical thing is, yes, environment does matter, but it's not the only thing. Because what about people in the same environment that are eating the same food, drinking the same water, breathing the same air? So if we have a clean environment, yet we have two fish in the bowl together, or whether we're talking about identical twins in the same household in a clean environment, and one of them gets quote unquote sick or has an infection and the other one doesn't. Why is it, or what's the difference between the individual that will allow one person to fall ill while another doesn't? Now, as far as bacteria and viruses, this is where I was starting to think, but jumping the gun a little bit with the fishbowl analogy, is we are covered head to toe in bacteria and viruses. There are millions, if not trillions, of bacteria and viruses all over the surface of our skin, in our body, in our gut, all over our entire body. We are just literally covered. You cannot get rid of all the bacteria and viruses, nor would we want to, because we also know they're really helpful for our health. But they never go away. They're there 24/7, 365 days a year. Bacteria and viruses are everywhere. Now, through good hygiene, we want to limit harmful bacteria and viruses, of course, because we do want to practice good hygiene. But as far as bacteria and viruses, you can't get rid of them. We can't eliminate them. It's not a war of us against microbes. We have a defense mechanism for that. Your skin is a barrier, right? Your skin produces certain enzymes and things that help to fight off bacteria and viruses. The same thing with your mucus and your tear ducts and all of that. We have a line of defense to protect us from harmful bacteria and viruses. But we also live symbiotically with thousands, if not millions, of other bacteria and viruses all over the surface of our skin. And it's really about keeping a good balance of those. Now, something about when we look at the flu, because we can learn a lot when we look at the flu because they keep a lot of research and data on the flu. We have what we call flu season. Now, the funniest thing to me about flu season is the flu virus never goes away. It doesn't just kind of start showing up and like, hey guys, I'm the flu, I'm here. It's October time, I'm getting ready, I'm coming for you. In November, I'm warming up. December, January, February, I got you. March, I'm holding on. Oh, and then I go away and I disappear. That's not what happens. The flu virus is there all year round. It never goes away. But why do we find that more people become susceptible or get sick in the winter months? That's what we have to look at. It's seasonal that we see more people become susceptible, but it's not the change of seasons alone or just the time of year that causes more bacteria viruses to come around. That's just not logical. That's not what happens. So what does happen? Do people stop washing their hands in the winter? Do they get lazy? They're not going outside as much, so I'm just going to sit inside and I'm not going to, clean stuff and I'm not going to wash my hands. No, people still have the same sanitary practices in summer as they do in the winter. So it's not a lack of hygiene that's happening in the winter months. But what is happening in the winter? Because it is happening seasonal, or susceptibility to infection or of harmful microorganisms happens obviously seasonally. But what is it? What changes? And we're going to go through that as we go through some more stuff. But another thing is, our mindset has to change a little bit from attacking and killing, destroying microorganisms to strengthening our own innate immune system in our body, making sure that we're best adapt to handle them, because we now know over the last 20 years, really, maybe even the last 10, the research is exploding on the microbiome. And so we know from the 1900s, the early mid 1900s through even the late 1900s, we had a war on microbes, man. We were going to destroy them. We were going to eliminate them. We were going to kill them. We had every antibacterial thing. We swabbed everything. We wiped everything. We took antibiotics every time we had a sniffle to just fight off an infection. But what do we know? What does all the media show us if we look back on what they used to report on? Or what we know through the research is that we're creating superbugs. By trying to destroy bacteria and viruses, they evolve, they adapt, they're becoming stronger. We have more deadly bacteria and viruses now than ever before because they evolve and they adapt, okay? So by trying to attack and destroy them, we're causing them to come back even stronger. We have bacteria that are completely resistant to any antibiotic that we have. And so just attacking and destroying bacteria and trying to eliminate it, and the overuse of antibiotics has led to a big problem. But again, going back to, we now know that bacteria and viruses are throughout our entire body. They have a beneficial effect in the body. We live symbiotically with them. There's millions of bacteria in our gut, trillions actually. And also we're starting to say there's a virome. So there's not just the bacteria, but there's also viruses that are in our body that we live symbiotically with. But it's really when that environment gets disturbed or out of balance, that we start to have issues where the quote-unquote bad bacteria starts to, take over, or it creates an environment that the bacteria and viruses that are more harmful to us love to grow and flourish in. So we need to stop with the war on the microbes, and we need to start looking at how do we strengthen the innate immune system, or how do we strengthen the body to its environment to better able to adapt. Because if we look at where the most sanitation, what one place do you think we do more sanitation and more sterilization than any other place? Hospitals, right? Because we need to, because we're cutting people open, we have surgeries, we have medical interventions that we're doing. We try to keep them as clean as possible, but yet where are the most deadly infections found? The most antibiotic resistant, harmful bacteria on the planet are found in hospitals. And so no matter how much we try to sterilize and remove or destroy microorganisms, we just can't, because they're everywhere, right? And 99,000 people are going to die, or do die, according to the data and the research, from hospital-acquired infections every single year. We just can't destroy microorganisms. Yes, and if we're doing surgery, we want to do our best to eliminate the exposure, because we're cutting the body and allowing bacteria and viruses into different parts of the body where we normally have a defense to protect against them, and we're taking that away. So we do want those environments as sterile as possible. But we can't take that mentality out to on the street to everyday life. It's not about eliminating all the bacteria and viruses. It's about, again, increasing our own innate ability to adapt to them in the environment. So again, why does one person get sick and another doesn't? It has to do with the individual's innate ability to adapt. So you have an innate intelligence in your body. From the moment you were conceived, you were a sperm and an egg, and you went from one cell into trillions of cells. That is you, that is sitting there watching this video right now. That intelligence, whether you want to say it's from God, evolution, or whatever, I'm going to say God, but that God-given innate intelligence that is in your body never left you. It's always there. It always stays in your body. It's what does the healing. If you break a bone, we put a cast on there so it's in the right place and it's going to heal straight, but it's your innate intelligence, the wisdom inside the body that does the healing. And so it's the same thing that, like I said, took you from one cell into trillions of cells, but that it's also what runs your immune system. That innate immune system tells your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, but it runs the immune system and everything else in your body. And that system, the innate intelligence of your body, runs through your nervous system. And so your nervous system and the health of your nervous system is vital. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what you can do to make sure that that system is functioning at its best. But it really is about the own innate ability of the individual that makes it resistant and resilient to its environment. We can either wage war against the microbes, which we have not been very successful at doing, or we can learn to optimize the immune system. There's a lot of this, talk, or what I'm seeing posts or articles saying you can't strengthen the immune system, which to me is kind of semantics, because we're kind of it's getting a little silly, because if we can weaken our immune system, we can suppress the immune system. Why can't we strengthen it, right? Or, okay, well, maybe if we have an optimum function immune system, you can't strengthen it. But most people have a low running immune system compared to where it should be. So if it's running lower than we want it to, or at a subpar level, we can strengthen or optimize it so it's running like it's supposed to. And that's what we want to talk about on how or what we need to do that. Two questions we need to ask: what weakens the immune system? And also, how do we optimize the immune system? So before we go into optimization, we're going to go over the 5 things that we can do to optimize the immune system. We're going to talk about what weakens the immune system, what weakens us to our environment and makes us more susceptible to getting sick. And to tell people that you can't optimize the immune system is just ridiculous, unscientific, and harmful. So the number one way to weaken the immune system is stress. Now, stress is, in biomedical terms, stress is any adverse physical, mental, or emotional stressor that upsets the organism's homeostasis. Now, an amazing study that was done in the New England Journal of Medicine back in 1991 was they actually administered viruses into the nostrils of subjects, and they actually used rhinovirus and even types of coronavirus directly administered into the nostrils of subjects in the study. And what they found were those that had the most stress on their system, those who were most stressed out, physical, chemical, emotional, and we'll get into that in a moment, but those with the most stress on the system were the ones that got sick and also had more severe infection. Those with the least amount of stress never even got sick. So even with directly swabbing the nostrils with viruses that cause different types of infection, those that had lower stress didn't even fall ill or get sick, right? Or what we call sick, had no signs of illness. Their immune system can handle it. So we know that stress just destroys the immune system and weakens the immune system. Now, there are 3 different types of stress. And so we hear this term all the time, and everybody immediately goes to emotional stress. And that's probably even more what they were looking at, I would say, in the study. But really, you have 3 types of stress: physical, chemical, and emotional stress. Now, all 3 of these will activate your fight or flight nervous system, like if a tiger jumped out at you. It doesn't matter what type of stress, it activates the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system. Now, if you're walking down the street and a tiger jumps out at you, your brain sees a tiger, sends signals to your adrenal glands. It dumps cortisol, catecholamines, your epinephrine, and your adrenaline. Your heart goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your immune system, your cell-made immune system that fights off infections gets down-regulated because you don't have to worry about fighting off a cold or flu if there's a tiger. You got to run or fight that tiger. You got to be able to get away from that. Your parts of your brain for long-term learning concentration starts to go down. Your cholesterol goes up because there's a higher chance of wound clotting. You need cholesterol for that. All these things are natural, physiological, healthy responses to stress, like a tiger jumping out at you. Now, when you get away from the tiger, let's say it was a really nice, friendly tiger that grew up with people, that was socialized and you didn't have to worry. Or let's say it's an old toothless tiger and you get away from the tiger. When you get away from the tiger, your body comes back out of that sympathetic fight or flight state, and we go into what's called parasympathetic, which is our rest, digest, our calm state. Now, those two, you're either in one or the other. We can't be in both at the same time. So if the body's in a constant state of fight or flight, that is not a good thing. Now, it doesn't have to be a tiger. It's any of the stressors that I had mentioned, physical, chemical, or emotional stress. Physiologically, is internally your body's acting like you have a tiger chasing you. So all those things start getting down regulated. Your immune system is not running optimally when your body is under a state of stress. Let's look at each of those types of stress a little bit more. But it is the brain and nervous system that's coordinating and regulating that sympathetic response. That's autonomic nervous system that is running the show. And so, like I mentioned, it's an accumulation of those stressors. So the physical, chemical, and emotional stress all add up together to either put us more, it's like having your foot always on the gas pedal and never on the brake pedal. We want to be more in a rest, calm state on a day-to-day basis, right? When your body's in parasympathetic, we know we have better immune function, better repair, overall just health and well-being occurs when the body's more in a parasympathetic rested state. We were never designed to be in constant sympathetic overdrive fight or flight mode, which is where most people are living nowadays. So we really want to work on shifting the body out of that sympathetic fight or flight dominant state. So evidence to support that. When we look at sympathetic nervous system increasing pro-inflammatory cytokines and exacerbates influenza virus pathogens. So in this study, they showed that when somebody was in a sympathetic nervous system state, or when that system was engaged, when they're exposed to influenza A virus, the virus was more harmful to them and they exhibited more symptoms, more inflammation, and had more of a response because their immune system couldn't handle it properly because their immune system was down-regulated because of that stress response. Another study that showed that salivary cortisol secretion and susceptibility to upper respiratory infection. Again, salivary cortisol is a way to measure when the body's in that sympathetic fight or flight state. There's other ways as well, such as heart rate variability, which we're going to talk about and a couple other things in a moment, and what we use in the office to detect if our patients are in sympathetic fight or flight all the time. But if your body is in fight or flight, cortisol is one of the ways we measure that. In this study, they looked at salivary cortisol levels and saw that when your body was producing more cortisol, showing that the body's more in sympathetic overdrive, more fight or flight mode, you have more susceptibility to upper respiratory tract infections. So again, it's lowering your immune response, your innate adaptive immune response when your body's stuck in constant fight or flight. So we definitely don't want to be stuck there. Another really interesting study looked at pregnant women and found that women that were stressed out during their pregnancy, their children actually had a lower immune system and to fight off infections, even as far as when they were 7, 11 years old. So if mom was under a lot of stress during the pregnancy in that fight or flight response, even that carried over into the children and set the stage for those children. And we see this all the time with the kids that we take care of in the practice. When there was a stressful pregnancy, stressful delivery, it affects the children. We see these kiddos that are stuck in fight or flight mode. Here's another study that demonstrates that. But I found this one crazy, and we know through epigenetics that it will cause genetic shifts. So the stress not only causes the immune response in the immediate, but will actually trigger certain genes in our body to express this fear response, making us more prone to be stuck in the sympathetic fight or flight state. So where does physical stress come from? It really comes from everything from birth trauma, stress at pregnancy, our poor posture, the way we sit, sports injuries, slips, falls. When you have trauma, to the body, it activates the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system. It causes what we call dyskinesia, which is abnormal bad motion to the spine, which will then interfere with normal sensory input to the brain, which causes our body to go into, it produces what's called nociception, or negative input to the brain, which triggers a fight or flight stress response in the body, which then leads to that dysautonomia, abnormal function of the autonomic nervous system. And then we start to see even abnormal energy output through the body as well. But physical stress, so it doesn't have to be emotionally stressed out like a stressful day at work. It could be a physical trauma or stressor to your body that is causing your body to be in sympathetic fight or flight state, making your immune system even regulate or run at a lower level, or not being able to function the way that it's supposed to. The other thing is chemical stress, toxins. So we know that toxins destroy the immune system. And so whether it's the air pollution, air we breathe, the toxic water, or wherever you live, toxins to the body are going to interfere with normal nerve function. Now, some things we can't control. You can't control right now the air that we breathe. That's why we want to make sure that we do clean the air and emissions. We want to decrease all the toxins we're exposed to the best we can. But what can we do right now? We know that alcohol consumption, when it gets to, once you start having 3 or 4 drinks in an evening, will just tank the immune system. I'm not talking about a glass of wine in the evening. There's mixed, there's some benefit associated with that. But when we're talking people that are having, once we start going 1 to 2, but then when we start going 3 to 4, alcohol has the opposite effect. So maybe some of the health benefits are then lost, and we know the immune system starts to tank when we have multiple drinks. So we want to avoid that. So really watch your alcohol consumption, especially in times of year when we're concerned about getting sick, right? So if we're worried about getting sick, this is not the time to be out going and drinking and partying. So really watch that part there. Sorry to break that to some people that now are, being quarantined in your house, stay home. What do I do? Hang out and drink? Probably not the best idea. Sugar wipes out the immune system. We know that. There's tons of research on that. We know that sugar and vitamin C use the same receptor to get into your cells. Not only does sugar interfere with certain functions of the immune system, it also is going to block normal vitamin C absorption into your cells. And we know vitamin C is crucial for a healthy, normal immune function. And then the antibiotics and medications that we take oftentimes will make us more susceptible to infection as well. There's a time and place for antibiotics. The point of this lecture is not bashing that. But like I said, we've created superbugs for overusing antibiotics. And not to mention, a lot of times when we use them, when trying to treat when people have viral infections, there's plenty of studies that show that more often than not, they're still given an antibiotic when they go into their doctor unnecessarily, which is creating more resistance. But also, when you take an antibiotic, you destroy all the good bacteria that are in your gut, which are so important for helping you fight off colds and flus and other infections, that actually is making you more susceptible to getting sick or catching other illnesses. Here's a couple studies that we're going to go over that talk specifically on those things. So heavy alcohol use, so just showing that it affects the autonomic nervous system. Oh, so this goes back to the whole fight or flight thing, right? So when you do have heavy alcohol use, and that's 3 or 4 drinks, heavy alcohol use is enough to put the body into a sympathetic fight or flight. So not only is alcohol breaking down to sugar, which we know interferes with the immune system, it's also going to stimulate the body into a fight or flight state once you start to move into the more 3 or 4 drink range or more, right? So we want to really limit the alcohol consumption. Role of sugar in human neutrophilic phagocytosis, so that's just part of the cell-mediated immune system that fights off your infections. Sugar will interfere with that, so we really, again, want to watch sugar. And the third study that you see there on the bottom shows that when children are drinking sugar-sweetened beverages, it actually increases blood pressure and sympathetic nervous system activation in children. So even when kids are drinking juices that are sweetened or just sweetened drinks in general, it's going to activate, put the body more in fight or flight, which we just talked about, lowers the immune system. Not to mention the sugar we know interferes with other parts of immune function. So we really want to limit that. Antibiotics destroy gut flora. Here's just a study supporting that. We already talked about that. Let's get through this. So we got a lot to get through, and I want to make sure that we can get through this in a good amount of time. Emotional stress. right? So this is when everyone thinks to when we think of stress, but we think about it more just dealing with work, juggling life, the kids, all the different things, family, loved ones, all the things we have to do. But the emotional stress of thoughts, even from what we're seeing on TV and news, man, it's stressful if you watch the news. It starts to paint a picture of doom and gloom. And we forget that our body has the most amazing system ever designed through our innate intelligence to fight off bacteria and viruses, and we don't look at the facts of how we can stop or spread it, and then we don't have to be as concerned, and it starts to create this fear inside of us. But that fear, by just watching the news and media, actually is activating your fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, making you more susceptible to infection. So sometimes it's good just to turn off the TV. Yeah, we want to maybe check on some websites or look on just one or things just to keep up to date. We want to know what's going on. But if we constantly are listening to that 24 hours a day or every hour we're awake, so 16 hours out of the day, and we're getting bombarded with the stress of this doom and gloom picture from the media, it's actually not helping anything. It's actually hurting and lowering your health and your immune system. And it's an accumulation of those three stressors, the physical, chemical, and emotional. All three of those are going to drive and put the body more in that fight or flight state. So how do we optimize the immune system? How do we make sure that our immune system is running the best that it can as innately was designed to do, right? So we have this amazing system inside of us. How do we assure that it's running at its best? We're going to go over the 5 ways to ensure your immune system is working at its absolute best. Number 1 is an optimal functioning nervous system. So we have to go back to the system that regulates and coordinates everything, which is the brain and nervous system, because if you are stuck in fight or flight sympathetic mode, your immune system is not going to be running at an optimal level or how we want it to. One of the beautiful things about chiropractic care and what we do with our patients is we check and monitor this in our office. We use heart rate variability, which is a way to track and measure if somebody's stuck in fight or flight mode. And we can also see when their body is shifting and getting out of that mode as well. It is important to get the body out of fight or flight mode. You do want to decrease the stressors that we talked about, avoid the sugar, the emotional stress as well. But the coolest thing about when we adjust patients, it actually helps to put the body more into a parasympathetic rest calm mode. It helps get the body out of fight or flight. Here are just a couple studies that are demonstrating that heart rate variability is a way to check that the body is in that fight or flight stress response. And then there's studies showing that when they call it spinal manipulation of patients will improve heart rate variability, showing that the body's more adaptable to that stress response. And the effects of chiropractic care on heart rate variability, another study there, and then also another study on the bottom there. That was showing that the adjustments improve brain function. Actually, when we adjust our patients, it's activating the prefrontal cortex, and it's parts of the prefrontal cortex that are able to calm and reset that fight or flight stress response of the body. So the adjustments are helping in multiple ways of getting that body out of the sympathetic fight or flight response. There are even studies showing, depending on areas of the spine where we choose to adjust, will have either a more stimulating effect or a calming effect, whether stimulating the parasympathetic or the sympathetic part of the nervous system. So we help to balance that system back out. And a really cool study that was done back in the 90s as well was they were looking at HIV patients, and they took 2 groups, one getting adjusted and one that were not, over a 6-month time period. The group that was getting adjusted had a 48% increase in their CD4 cells compared to the control group that wasn't getting adjusted. They actually received even a sham treatment. They actually had a decrease of 7.9% of their CD4 cells. And CD4 cells are just one of our immune type cells that we can look at to measure the strength and the function of the immune system. When that goes down, we know the immune system is not working how we want it to, right? And we know HIV patients are some of the most immune compromised people on the planet. And this was really awesome to see in a 6-month time period that the chiropractic adjustment group actually had an increase. I don't know why there hasn't been follow-up study on this. I wish this should be a longer study. Hopefully there'll be more in the future on this. However, this was just a great study that demonstrated how the chiropractic adjustment even influences the immune system. Here's a couple more. I'm not going to go through all these, but so a lot of times people ask, well, does chiropractic even influence the immune system? Yes, it gets out of fight or flight, but does it have an effect on the immune system in other ways? And that's one study. Here's a couple others. Here, just enhanced phagocytic cell respiratory bursts induced by spinal manipulation, potential role of substance P, and another one, enhanced neutrophil respiratory bursts as a biological marker for manipulation forces, duration of the effect of association with substance P and tumor necrosis factor. Just other studies are demonstrating that the chiropractic adjustment influences the nervous system in a positive way. Number two, so make sure you're getting adjusted. Number two, sleep, right? We know sleep is important. When you're not getting enough sleep, you start to feel run down, right? And when you start to feel run down long enough, what happens? You end up getting sick. You get a cold, you get a flu. I know this myself. When there's times when I'm super busy, I got more going on, I start sleeping less, really doing lots of stuff. Those are times that if you ever do catch a cold or flu, you've been draining your system down a little too much, right? And the research supports it. If you sleep less than 6 hours a night, you are at higher susceptibility for developing the common cold, so any other cold, flu, virus that's out there. And we know that just your overall health is going to decrease if you're not getting adequate sleep. Make sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, especially if times that you're concerned about the immune system and then your immune system running and operating at its best. Number three, eat healthy, proper diet. Now this is huge because the food we eat provides the macro and micronutrients that drive all the physiology and all the things going on in our body. We want to make sure we're eating food. Way too many people out there are eating just tons of products, and the difference between food and a product is if it has a list of ingredients, it is product, it is not food, okay? Focus on eating food. Fruits, vegetables, tomato, apple. One word things are food, right? Beef, chicken, fish. One word things. Again, I'm not talking about when you're cooking and you're adding some spices and things like that, but when we're looking at what we're eating, we need to eat food, right? Shop on the periphery of your grocery store. It's funny with the panic and all the grocery stores, all the processed stuff was gone first because I get it, the shelf life, but everybody's going for the processed stuff and all the fresh stuff is there. Now that's going too. You can't even get eggs anymore with the panic, but that was the last to go, which I kind of found was kind of funny because eggs actually do have a pretty good shelf life. But we need to eat healthy food, right? Our food directly will affect, the foods that we eat will affect what nutrients we're getting in our system. But even if we're eating bad foods, processed foods, refined foods, sugars, like we talked about in the earlier studies, that's going to suppress your immune system. We need to avoid those things, but we need to make sure that we're getting the necessary nutrients for your immune system to function properly. Because if we're not getting the necessary nutrients for our immune system to function properly, we're going to be more susceptible to infection. And again, we're talking about strengthening the innate adaptive immune system so that it can withstand, it can handle things properly. So again, I already talked about the avoiding sugar. Probiotics, here's a huge thing. We talked about the dangers of antibiotics destroying the good bacteria in your gut, but the bacteria, the probiotics, we're starting to see in the research now actually prevents us from even things like respiratory infections. So who's the at-risk group right now? Senior citizens, right? That's who everybody's really concerned about for coronavirus. And if you look at CDC, they said if you're younger, you really don't even have to worry. You'll maybe have a sniffle or a slight symptoms, if you even have any symptoms at all. But the people we're really worried about and we're trying to protect right now is the elderly. Well, let's look at this study. Consumption of fermented dairy products containing probiotic Lactobacillus casei reduces duration of respiratory infection in the elderly in a randomized controlled trial. This is awesome. This study showed that with consumption of that Lactobacillus casei, that it reduced the duration of the respiratory infection. So we might even want to be a little preventive and be ahead of the curve, but if we do have elderly that are fighting something off, maybe you want to make sure you're getting the necessary probiotics. I think it's more important to have them to begin with and not use it as a treatment, but make sure you have those good bacteria in your gut just to start with. Now, I'm just going to say that you can go with what the research says here, but I usually recommend people to limit or avoid dairy because it can be very mucus producing for a lot of people. And if that is, it might cause more stagnation and more mucus production, which will create a breeding ground for other bacteria and viruses to grow in. So you might want to consider getting your probiotics from sources such as Taking a Probiotic or fermented foods such as kimchi or sauerkraut or any other more fermented food where you're going to get it that way other than dairy. Just if you know you're dairy sensitive especially, but a lot of people do better when they do avoid dairy. Now let's look at this study, probiotics and respiratory virus infections. Now in this study, when we look at it, we see that when they looked at 33 clinical trials, 28 of the trials showed that probiotics had a beneficial effect in the outcomes of respiratory tract infections. So the bacteria that's in our gut has an influence even on our ability for our body to fight off respiratory infections. Probiotics may exert antiviral effects directly in probiotic virus interaction or via stimulation of the immune system. So our probiotics and the bacteria in our gut are so important for us to fight off infections. So if we're taking antibiotics all the time and destroying them and all the good bacteria that we're supposed to have, we're working against what our body innately needs to fight off infections. So it's really important that we do make sure that we're supporting and getting those probiotic or the good bacteria in our gut. Now this study is super interesting because this is getting into, we can talk about vitamin D3 supplementation, but the best source to get vitamin D3 is from the sunlight. Now the hard thing, if we talked about, like we mentioned in the beginning of the talk, what happens in the winter months that's different than other times a year is people are inside more, which you can say, oh, they're spreading more germs, but maybe we're inside more, we're not getting sunlight, we're not getting vitamin D production. And in this study, that's kind of implying just that, because what they looked at were multiple years of the flu season of when people get sick. If the same months but in different years had more days of sunlight, they found significant less cases of the flu. So by having more days of sunlight, even in the winter months, they saw that people had less cases of the flu, which is just amazing. And a lot of that has to do with the production of vitamin D3 from being out in the sun, or maybe people went outside more and got fresh air and breathing all that goodness in, taking that good energy from just being outside. But a lot of that has to do with that vitamin D that's created from sun exposure, because we know from a lot of other studies that sun exposure or that vitamin D is a crucial component for the immune system to function properly. Here's just a few other studies that talk about that. Vitamin D is a modulator of the immune system. Vitamin D supplementation to prevent acute respiratory tract infections, systemic review, and meta-analysis of individual participant data. But you can just go through tons of this research on vitamin D. We know that vitamin D is, and this isn't a treatment for illness, we want to make sure that we're optimizing our vitamin D levels, because most healthcare practitioners are going to agree when you do blood tests, because you can test your vitamin D levels, most people are significantly deficient in vitamin D3. So if we test that and we see that, we can either supplement with it, or if you live in a place like I do in beautiful San Diego, we can get outside and get in the sun year round. But if you don't live in a place like that, you want to make sure you're getting that vitamin D3 through supplementation just to keep your optimal levels up, because your body requires it for normal immune function year round. Vitamin C. This is almost taboo to talk about lately with everything that's going on. If you almost get shot if you mention vitamin C. Now, again, I'm not talking about vitamin C as a treatment. I'm talking about vitamin C is required for the immune system to function properly. That's not my opinion, that is fact. If you do not have vitamin C, if you are deficient in vitamin C, your immune system cannot work the way that it's supposed to. Here's just a couple studies that you can look at and read. I'm not going to spend time going through this, but the evidence is clear that vitamin C is essential for the immune system. And like we said, here's another one, vitamin C and infections. We need vitamin C for the immune system to function properly. It is essential for us to have that. Again, what blocks vitamin C? Sugar. So we want to limit the sugar because it's going to interfere with that vitamin C in the body. Here's more studies on that. Immunomodulatory and antimicrobial effects of vitamin C. So there's tons of things to support having and making sure you have enough vitamin C. Plus, there's no harm by taking vitamin C. So optimize your body's vitamin C during the winter months, or maybe even year round, just to keep your body's immune system functioning optimally the way it's designed to make sure you never are deficient in vitamin C. Another study suggesting, looking at vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, echinacea as main things to really help with a common cold, or just to prevent or even treat common colds, because there's different takes on that, but all these things together really help the immune system just to operate at its best. A huge thing is vitamin A. And now vitamin A really supports our first line of defense, which are the mucous membranes, so really after the skin and the surface here, but if things make it to the mucous membranes, vitamin A is crucial for that part of our immune system to be able to fight off antigens and things that get into the body. So we definitely need vitamin A in the immune system, or to make sure we have adequate levels of vitamin A for our immune system to function properly. In this summary through here, vitamin A has both promoting and regulatory roles in both the innate immune systems and adaptive immunity. Therefore, it can enhance the organism's immune function and provide enhanced defense against multiple infectious diseases. So we need to, again, make sure we're optimizing our vitamin A levels as well. So also antiviral effects of vitamin A on norovirus infections via modulation of the gut microbiome. Respiratory tract epithelial cells express retinaldehyde dehydrogenase to enhance IgA production by stimulated B cells in the presence of vitamin A. So again, the vitamin A, we need that for our body, especially in the respiratory tract, to produce the IgA that we need to fight off the infections that we do come in contact with. So it is essential that our body is getting enough vitamin A. Zinc is one that's really important, and a really interesting study that showed up on zinc is that zinc helps against the infections by almost tapping the brake on the immune system. It does play a role in different parts as well, but what they found is that your immune system, when it is fighting something, it needs something to almost like calm down the immune system to know when it's time to like let it slow down, and it doesn't need to keep revving up and when it is fighting off an infection. And what was really interesting in this study was they had mentioned that zinc deficiency actually affects about 2 billion people worldwide, including an estimated 40% of the elderly in the United States, who are also among the most likely in America to end up in the ICU. And the thing that they were showing in the study is they were doing an animal study looking at sepsis and zinc supplementation, or using zinc and zinc deficiency, so creating one group with zinc deficiency, and they saw a huge significance in the outcomes of those when they had sufficient zinc in the body. Zinc in the human health, effect of zinc in immune cells. So not only for that, but zinc is essential for the immune system to function properly, so we do want to make sure we have adequate zinc levels. But I found it really interesting in that previous one, so 40% of the elderly are zinc deficient. So we're concerned right now about our elderly population. Maybe we want to make sure they have enough zinc, just to be a little preventative, right? Nothing wrong with being preventive. It's not going to harm them to take a little extra vitamin, or to have a little more zinc in the body. So we could spend all day talking about nutrition and all the other micronutrients that are essential for the body. Those are ones that I believe are really key and super important for us to understand to strengthen the innate immune response, because we know they have such profound effects on the immune response of the body. Now, the other thing is exercise. We know that exercise is essential for every single cell in your body for normal physiology, normal health, normal expression, but exercise is also great for balancing out the sympathetic fight or flight response of the body. We know that it actually has, even though it puts stress on the body, it's eustress, it's good stress, the long-term effect is that it actually helps your body get more to a parasympathetic state when you are at rest. So it really helps to calm things. But again, if you're exercising, get outside and do it. Get that sunlight. Get a 2-for-1, right? Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Get that sunlight. I know some people don't like that expression. Sorry if you don't. My apologies. But get out there and get sunlight, right? And also at the same time, get your body moving, which helps your body, your insulin resistance, helps decrease cortisol levels, just helps decrease blood sugar, all of that good stuff that we know is important for the immune system. Another thing, effects of stress on the immune function, good, bad, and the beautiful, is just talking about, again, how stress decreases the immune system. That's bad stress. So again, you have good stress, bad stress. Good stress, like exercise, helps the immune system. Bad stress, like we talked about, physical, chemical, emotional, is going to lower the immune system. This study, even, it was kind of cool that I came across on ABC News, showed that people that exercise, and this was a study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, they looked at 1,000 adults, and those that exercise on a regular basis had way less incidence of colds or flus throughout the winter season. So again, what do we do, or what can we do to make sure that our bodies are more resilient, right? That our innate immune system, we don't even really understand the innate immune system completely yet. We're still learning more and more, but these are things that we know that we can do that are going to optimize how that innate system operates and runs. This brings us to number 5, positive mental health. We know that the fear, we already talked about how fear will activate fight or flight. part of our nervous system, lowering our immune system. But we know through so much research, there's so much evidence supporting that our beliefs completely change every single cell in our body and how our body functions. It is so essential that we have positive mindset, good beliefs, good thoughts. And whether you do that through prayer, meditation, positive affirmations, getting together in laughter, we know the amazing benefits of laughter. Even on like changing gene expression in diabetics, laughter has a huge effect. The body is so amazing that these things and that positive mental attitude are only going to help your body be more resistant, more resilient. A couple of my favorite books ever are, one is Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who talks about how your beliefs completely change your genetic expression down to the cellular level, actually the genetic level, but will impact whether you get sick, whether you stay well. If you believe you're going to sick, you'll get sick. If you believe you're going to be well, you'll be well. Same thing, Dr. Joe Dispenza does a great job of going through that. He talks in his book, You Are the Placebo, he talks about how the placebo, because what a placebo is if you take something, and this is how they do research, right, to see if something's going to help you or not. If, let's say, we're just trying to see if drug A is good for you, or we're going to give you a sugar pill to see which one has an effect. If you believe the sugar pill is the thing that's going to make you better, you believe it's the drug, you're actually going to get better. Not just because you believe you're thinking you're getting better, your body, your physiology actually changes and you get better and you heal. So the brain has the ability, because of your thoughts, to actually heal itself, which is just totally crazy and mind-blowing, which is why we even have to a double-blinded placebo-controlled study, because it's so hard to try to trick the placebo effect of the body because it is so powerful. But what if you can actually tap into that placebo effect without tricking yourself? And that's what that book, You Are the Placebo, is about. So if you've never read it, highly recommend it. It's an amazing book. But just talking about the placebo, why I want to share this is because the placebo, there's also what's called a nocebo. So you can make yourself well by believing something is going to make yourself healthy and well, but you can also make yourself sick by believing something is going to make you sick. If I took a sugar pill, but I thought it was poison, I will start vomiting. My body will start trying to get it out. That's how powerful the mind is. So if we believe that we're going to get sick, we can actually make ourselves sick. You can lower your immune system, downregulate your genes for fighting off infection by believing either you're not healthy or that you're going to become sick. You can actually make yourself sick. So having a happy, positive mindset, believing in your immune system, which is the evidence supports is there. So you don't have to just believe it, because we have evidence to support that you have an innate immune system, that it runs, it's there to protect you, it's always on guard for you. Just give the body what it needs, make sure you're getting everything it needs, but remove the things that are going to interfere with it to optimize your body's chances of fighting off any infection that you come in contact with. So thoughts are essential to address those things. And not only thoughts, but I just did a quick search because I came across something as I was looking for other things on the benefits of hugs on health. And especially at this time as we're talking about social distancing, not a lot of hugging's going on. People don't want to shake hands. You're seeing people maybe afraid to hug. But a year or two ago, we're seeing in different studies that hugs may protect you against stress and infection, right? So by hugging, it lowers the stress response in the body, making you less susceptible to getting sick. So go out there and hug somebody. Hug somebody you live with. If you don't live with somebody, you live alone, come in and see me. I'll give you a hug. I'm not afraid of the bacteria and germs that are going around right now. My immune system is strong. I know I can fight off anything I come in contact with. I will gladly give you a hug. So if you need a hug, come hug me, or hug a family or friend or a loved person, because that has so much benefit on our health. Like I said, if somebody's coughing, sneezing all over the place, if it's a loved one, I'm still going to hug them, because that's going to help them get better faster, and that's what the research shows. So, something to keep in mind, to think about, just the power of a hug, right, on how that affects the physiology of the body. So, in summary, right, I'm not saying not to wash your hands. Continue doing that, but we do that year-round, or we should be doing that year-round. That's just good hygiene, good practices that we should do all the time. We will make sure we're even doing a little more hygiene in the office just to help assure our patients you don't have to be as afraid. We'll disinfect even a little bit more of the office, keep things as clean as possible. But really, you don't have to live in fear. If you have the faith and belief and know that your immune system is always on guard, it's there to protect you. And if you keep it strong, give the body what it needs, it's going to protect you. So in summary, optimize your nervous system by getting adjusted, which is going to get your system out of fight or flight. It's going to stimulate the immune cells of the body to help fight infections even better. Make sure you're getting adequate sleep, eating a healthy diet, avoiding the sugar and the toxins like we've said multiple times throughout this talk already, and make sure you're exercising, getting outside, breathing all that good fresh air is always amazing and awesome as well, and thinking positive, happy thoughts, loving each other. Like I said, if you need a hug, come get a hug. I'm happy to hug you if you need to, if somebody else won't give you a hug. But make sure to reach out, give somebody a hug, right? Again, if you don't be afraid of breathing or just being in the presence of other people, because I know that to me there's a lot of fear associated with what they're telling people is you can be a carrier and be spreading it and not know it. Well, they also told us that it's only spread through the droplets. And so unless you're touching that, getting saliva from your mouth or the mucous membranes and touching stuff, or coughing and sneezing on stuff, expressing symptoms, you're not spreading disease. So if you're healthy, stay healthy, hug somebody. Don't be afraid to hug somebody. If you're not expressing symptoms, you're not going to spread disease with this condition. So keep that in mind, and I love and appreciate you guys. I'm here for you. We are going to remain open unless we are told otherwise. From what I've recently heard from our regulatory board is that chiropractic is considered a necessary healthcare that we can choose to maintain to stay open for our patients. So we are here for you. We will be here for you unless we are told otherwise. So I love and appreciate you. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit or you would like them to hear this information as well. To me, it's vital that we get this information out there because they're not talking about this in mainstream media. We're only talking about the fear component of it. And sometimes it's good to take a step back and take just another view. We have different philosophies, different lenses or views or ways that we can view the world, but this is based on the evidence, based on the facts. So, like I said, share the love, give some hugs. Thank you.